Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because honestly, we have some truly mind-bending material to get through. If you're a focused learner trying to understand exactly where the global economy, technology, and frankly our entire future are headed, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're breaking down a fascinating analysis from Ark Invest's Cathie Wood. Her overarching thesis, that a massive structural convergence is drastically reshaping our world right now, as we speak. And it all centers around one absolutely crucial core business strategy, vertical integration. Okay, let's dive right into this. Just listen to this quote from Cathie Wood. This technology revolution is going to dwarf the Industrial Revolution by far. We really need to pause for a second and just absorb the sheer magnitude of that statement. We're not just talking about a standard market shift here, or a new product cycle, or some temporary trend that's going to fade next year. According to Ark Invest tracking, the stakes are profoundly historic. The technological leaps we're experiencing right now are going to fundamentally reorganize how society functions, literally on the same scale as the invention of the steam engine or the electric grid.
So, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the 15 tech convergence. Second, dominating the supply chain. Third, the Robotaxi cost collapse. Fourth, orbital data center potential. And finally, American crypto and deregulation.
All right, part one, the 15 tech convergence. To really understand the present, we have to look back at the seeds that were planted during the tech bubble 20 to 25 years ago. Those seeds have fully germinated into the 15 converging technologies that Ark Invest is actively tracking today. And the crazy part? They aren't just evolving in isolation. They're converging. They're crashing into one another and creating these explosive new capabilities. I mean, even Elon Musk, who is obviously a leader in multiple forward-thinking industries, recently admitted that this convergence across his own companies is happening way faster than even he initially realized. The lines between software, hardware, space exploration, and artificial intelligence, they are completely blurring. Moving right along to part two, dominating the supply chain. So, how do visionary leaders actually navigate all this chaos? The answer is vertical integration. This is the strategy of controlling multiple or even all stages of your company's supply chain to build entirely new ecosystems from the ground up. The absolute crucial point here is this. If your goal is to create a literal new world, you simply cannot rely on fragmented legacy systems to get you there. You can't just run to the hardware store to buy parts for the future, right? Because they literally don't exist yet. When innovators like Elon Musk break literal new ground, the required supply chain just isn't there. They have to build the tools themselves. This strategy is what actually enables the invention of completely new products, and it forces immense employee focus through incredibly aggressive timelines. Take a look at the massive $55 to $120 billion chip factory investment spanning across Musk's companies. He isn't sitting around waiting for other chip makers to catch up to his vision. He's aggressively building the foundational tools himself to overcome resource scarcity and completely dominate that supply chain.
Which brings us to part three, the Robotaxi cost collapse.
Let's take these abstract theories of convergence and vertical integration and apply them to a very tangible, data-driven reality. Let's compare two vastly different approaches to the impending autonomous vehicle rollouts. On one side, you have Tesla's internally built, fully vertically integrated platform. They control the software, the hardware, the battery, the manufacturing, the whole shebang. On the flip side, you have competitors like Waymo. Now, they have brilliant software for sure, but they rely heavily on external auto manufacturers to actually build their vehicles. That is a massive external dependency built right into their supply chain. And this is exactly where the math gets genuinely staggering. Currently, under an umbrella like Uber, you might pay upwards of $3 per mile for a ride. But because of total vertical integration, Ark Invest projects Tesla's Robotaxi costs are going to plummet to just 25 cents per mile as they scale up. That is a complete collapse in the cost of transportation. Meanwhile, Ark estimates that by 2030, Waymo's cost structure will still remain 50% higher than Tesla's. Why? Simply because Waymo is dependent on other manufacturers and supply chains that all need to take their own little slice of the profit pie. Tesla just doesn't have that friction. All right, part four, orbital data center potential. You know, solving earthly resource bottlenecks eventually leads you off the Earth entirely. As AI and tech converge, they demand an immense amount of computing power, and that requires massive terrestrial data centers. But we are hitting a terrestrial wall. The NIMBY problem, not in my backyard. We're seeing intense local resistance right now in places like Memphis and Mississippi because these data centers consume huge amounts of land and cause local electricity prices to absolutely spike. People just don't want them in their neighborhoods. So, What's the vertically integrated solution to earthly constraints? You bypass them completely. You literally move the data centers to space. The sheer scale of the financial impact here is hard to wrap your head around. According to Ark's preliminary work, if Musk successfully integrates orbital data centers, it could potentially multiply Tesla's current revenue generation by 10 to 20 times. That is an order of magnitude higher than their existing models. It essentially turns a car company into a space-based computing infrastructure titan, which perfectly ties into the massive anticipation we're seeing surrounding a potential $75 billion SpaceX IPO.
But powering all this massive convergence, whether it's down here on Earth or up in space, requires an absolute hardware boom. Right now, the AI industry relies heavily on GPUs, running at a ratio of about 4 to 5 GPUs for every single CPU. However, as AI scales and the inference phase becomes more demanding, industry leaders like AMD's Lisa Su project this is actually going to shift to a 1-to-1 ratio. This means traditional CPUs are sort of the massive sleeper hit of this whole revolution. It's really an all-hands-on-deck hardware approach. Old-fashioned chips and new-fashioned chips, all working together to make these incredible leaps possible.
Finally, Part 5, American Crypto and Deregulation. Now, all these technologies we've discussed, they don't just exist in a vacuum, right? They exist within a broader regulatory framework. Based purely on Cathie Wood's analysis of the landscape, several macroeconomic factors are currently aligning to foster what she calls a new financial world order. This involves impending deregulation policies and tax cuts, which are analyzed as creating a highly business-friendly environment. Because of this, Ark expects the return on invested capital in the U.S. to rise significantly. And importantly, this specific environment is projected to retain and accelerate domestic crypto innovation, specifically the explosive growth of stablecoins like Tether and Circle. Rather than pushing this innovative sector overseas, Ark suggests this combination of deregulation and tax policy positions the U.S. to potentially lead the entire global crypto revolution. Which brings us to our final point, and honestly, the most important question of this entire explainer. As convergence and vertical integration reshape our entire economy, where do you fit into this new financial world order? We've just seen how 15 separate technologies are colliding. We've seen how dominating the supply chain can drop costs to unprecedented levels, push massive data centers into orbit, and completely redefine entire industries. Look, the future isn't just passively changing, it's being aggressively built from the ground up by those willing to control every single piece of the puzzle. So as you process this profound, historic shift, ask yourself, how are you going to apply these principles of intense focus and integration to your own learning, your investments, and your career? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.